Let's rock it. Let's do our thing.
Rock and roll.
Ken and Dr. aren't going to be.
So we are live right now. We are streaming. Welcome to the mini Shetakwa online launch event. We are very excited to see you here. And we have with us Mr. J.L. Collins.
Woohoo!
And the cool kids from Millennial Revolution, Christy and Bryce. Welcome. This is the sort of the gang of Chautauqua, and obviously my wonderful wife, Mrs. Katie Donegan.
Hello there.
Yay!
I'll introduce you as well.
And the equally wonderful Alan Donegan.
Why, thank you.
This is a real
Thank you.
mutual appreciation.
It is a mutual
society.
appreciation society. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. There was like 70 of you waiting for the stream to start, which was amazing to see. And I wanted to start with, we will have noticed this in the comments, Sam Ferguson, welcome to the stream, Sam, said, wow, I just tried to buy a ticket and they were sold out. And we were quite shocked at how fast this happened, but Chautauqua 2022 for Colombia sold out before we've done the live stream. So actually what we wanted to do on this live stream is focus on adding value to you, answering your questions, supporting you, giving you as much support as we can. And if you've got questions about Chautauqua, you are more than welcome to ask them. But for now, we're going to focus on financial independence, your questions, and all of those sort of things.
If I scurry off and go into my laptop, I'm not like Facebooking my mum. We're just monitoring the comments.
Yes, so please do put your comments and questions in the chat on the right, and we will ask them of J.L. Collins, Christian Bryce from Millennial Revolution, and we will have a chat to you. So to get us going, J.L., why did you start Chautauqua? Like, why did you do this?
Oh, well, this goes back into a little bit of ancient history, but back around, well, I started my blog in 2011, and probably around 2012, I started thinking it'd be kind of fun to speak about these things as well as just write about it. So I started looking for some kinds of events or conferences or what have you, where I might suggest that I could be a speaker. And I just didn't see anything out there. So I had to create it. And I did. So that's the simple answer.
I love that. It wasn't out there, so I created it.
I made
That's
it.
my kind of answer.
It's from my selfish point of view. I wanted to go to a cool place and have conversations with cool people and talk about cool stuff. And if it wasn't there to be done, then I selfishly created it so I could do that.
I love that. And Christian Bryce, how did you find out about Chautauqua?
So from following the blogs, like Pete's blog in the past, I've been reading a lot about Chautauqua. Back then we were really busy working, so we could never actually buy it in time before it sold out. So when we were actually asked to speak at the Chautauqua, I actually just could not react. When Jim asked me that for a minute, I was just like frozen. And he was like, hello, is your feed working? Hello. Yeah. I'm like, I'm live. I'm just in shock. Yeah. So, and it has been so incredibly life-changing. I knew it was going to be amazing, but not to this extent, like to the point where we are actually currently staying in an Airbnb right now with our Chautauquan family and basically hanging out for a whole month. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, really.
Yeah. It's kind of become an integral part of our lives. It's something that we look forward to like every single year, and we know it brings so much happiness and joy to all the people that come to it, and we just can't get enough of it. It was really, really heartbreaking for the past 2 years where we couldn't get out of the country. We couldn't do this kind of thing. I mean, lots of stuff sucked about the pandemic, but losing Chautauqua, that one hurt the most. But hey, we're back, and we're better than ever, and we really can't wait to do this again. It really feels like, for us, like the fact that Chautauqua is coming back almost kind of feels like this is the end of the pandemic, like it all.
We can breathe again.
We breathe again. I mean, like Dr. Fauci, I'm sure there's other metrics that he's tracking, but for us, it was no Chautauqua sad.
Yeah.
Now Shetakwa happy. I mean,
Yeah.
like it feels like the world that we can breathe again. It feels like the world is going back into like normalcy, and we couldn't be happier.
So if you are tuned into this right now, you are tuned into the mini Chautauqua live. We're here with J.L. Collins from the Simple Path to Wealth, Christian Bryce from the Millennial Revolution, and the Donegans, and we're talking all things financial independence and Chautauqua. If you're tuned in, we would love to have your questions. So please write your questions in the chat, get the conversation started. Let's get talking about what is most important to you, because that is the whole point of doing that.
And it can cover anything. It can be about Chautauqua, it can be about investing, can be about Bryce. I was going to say something inappropriate and rude then, but it can be about anything.
Actually, points for the... You get points for the question that will make us blush the most. That's the new challenge. Yeah. So we have put on Chautauquas for many years now. They started in 2013, and that's the whole purpose of doing this, is to engage with the community and talk to cool people in cool locations about cool things. We actually have had a question come in from Alan Morrison, who said, does attendance make sense for people who are FI, stroke just retired, or like choose FI? Is it best for people who are on the journey? So I don't know who would like to ask that question. Like, who's best? What is Chautauqua best for? Mr. Collins.
I'll take that one. We have, Chautauqua is from the very beginning has been notable for its diversity on all kinds of measures that you can think of. But one of those measures of diversity is where people are in their economic journey. We try to discourage people at the very beginning. Certainly, people who are in debt should not be going into more debt to come to Chautauqua. And I would even suggest that if you're early in your journey, this is not the best way to be spending your money. But having said that, we've had people coming from the fairly early stages of their journey to people who are well beyond their FI number. We've had people who are at the beginning stages of building their wealth, and we have had some extraordinarily wealthy people come. I think the sweet spot, at least based on the one-on-one sessions that I have, seems to be people who are right at reaching their FI number. A lot of the conversations in my one-on-ones revolve around people showing me their spending, showing me their assets and their investments, and wanting to know, am I in fact FI, or how close am I? So I think if you did it on a bell curve, that would be the fat part of the bell curve.
Yes, and Katie and I, when we rocked up to Chautauqua as attendees, were probably about 30% of the way there. So we were, I guess, fairly early on in our journey, but we didn't blink twice at the price. We didn't have any debt, and we'd made good progress on it. So I've got a question, actually. I think this one will be perfect for Christian Bryce.
Well, I think it's directed towards him.
It probably is. It's from Sage Sam and Lisa Mills. I love the name Sage Sam. Millennial Revolution. If we desire to live nomadically after fire, how can we maintain brokerage accounts legally without a permanent address? It's like they know you, Bryce, so they had to put legally in the question.
I want your illegal ideas.
I have no illegal ideas. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. We're innocent. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's for speaking from a Canadian perspective, we maintain legal residence in Canada, and we maintain a permanent address in Canada, and we've actually been continuing to pay taxes, do tax returns, and all that kind of stuff. From a Canadian perspective, it's called a factual resident, where if you're nomadic, okay, here's the thing about being nomadic. You generally become tax resident somewhere where you spend more than 6 months of the year. But if you are nomadic like us and you just hop between country to country every month, for example, you don't spend more than 6 months in any one country, you maintain the residence of the last place that you were resident from. It's like, so you can't, because we didn't spend more than 6 months in any other country, we maintain our residence in our that from the Canadian government perspective, we're still they still treat us as if we're resident there. We pay taxes and all that kind of stuff, and we never became like deemed non-resident. From an American perspective, I think that I don't think that they care so much about the. I think that's also something similar there as well. I think for Americans, as long as you maintain your citizenship, you still have to maintain like tax. You still do tax returns in the U.S. as well. So the trick to being nomadic and still having a legal residence somewhere is don't immigrate to any other country, and you will maintain where the last place you were tax resident. And then from there, you don't have to do anything specific. You don't have to even inform anyone that you're non-resident because you're not legally non-resident.
In fact, it's actually difficult for us to remove all ties with Canada and become non-resident because the government wants you to pay taxes. Yeah. Like if you leave, then you actually get hit with a departure tax. And it's actually like they want you to prove that you're never going to come back to Canada so that you never pay taxes again. So it's actually not as easy as you think to remove all tax ties with the country that you're originally with.
Yeah, like maybe like 5 years ago, some people tried to like leave the country and argue that they were not tax resident anywhere, and therefore they didn't have to pay taxes anywhere. Mm-hmm. And obviously they didn't like that. There's now international agreements that you can't do that. I think it's called common reporting something like that. But yeah, that's no longer, it's actually quite difficult to do that now. And quite frankly, we're happy to continue paying taxes and still being a legal resident back in our home country because we love our home country. And it makes it way more complicated if you are to immigrate to a new country just to become non-resident because of all the brokerage account complications and stuff like that. So the short answer to that is don't immigrate to another country and you will still maintain tax residence in your old country.
Yes, and Katie and I still maintain our tax residency. We pay British taxes, even though we travel around the world, and we're quite happy to because it pays for the health service and all the other stuff. So that's what we do with that one. Moving on to a question from Nicole Cooper, which I found quite interesting. She had some specific questions about logistics. Nicole, don't worry, that's coming to you for Chautauqua. But her second question was quite interesting. Recommendations for things we should prepare to bring with us to Shetakwa, like a financial plan or a net worth or details. And I think Shetakwa actually inspired us to prepare dramatically to go there.
Once we bought the tickets, we were like, we've got to cover off any easy wins that anyone's going to tell us to do. And we were not tracking our expenses at that point. So I was like, right, Alan, we've got to start doing this, mate. We've got to get serious. We've got to be doing everything. So I made us track our expenses.
Yes, we tracked our expenses. We tracked everything for an entire year before we came. And actually, for everyone who's listening to this, even if you're not coming to the event, just pretend like you're going to be grilled on your numbers by J.L. Collins or Millennial Revolution and prepare for a year for that grilling. And that will remarkably change your finances. Remarkably.
You're making it seem like this is an exam they're going to.
So
we felt like it was, and then we turned up and everyone was so nice and they didn't care about our numbers at all.
In terms of the one-on-ones that you talked
about, I cared about your numbers.
Oh, thanks, JL.
I was horrified, but I cared.
We did have too much cash. We were told off dramatically for having too much cash.
So I guess there is no one thing that everyone needs to prepare for. It's kind of like whatever you want, whatever you're struggling with, whatever you want the most help with. I mean, like you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of financial experts. So if you just want to come talk to us and just talk about soccer or something like that, that's totally up to you and that's fine. But if you are struggling with something, it gives us the most ability to help you at the time if you have all the information that you need for us to understand and help you with that situation. But don't think that just because you didn't come, like this is your one and only chance to talk to us or anything like that. Even if you think of something that you want help with afterwards, feel free to email us. Once you're in Chautauqua, we will always be there to help you afterwards. And we still maintain relationships with a lot of the people that were attendees to previous Chautauquas, and we're always, we always help them, afterwards if we can.
Yeah, and I just want to add that everything is confidential. So if you ever felt, worried talking about it with your family, or like they say a lot of people, for like getting naked is actually more easy than getting financially naked.
Right.
So if you want to get financially naked with us, like totally up for it. And we're not going to judge you. It's going to be completely confidential. So just let it all hang out.
Yeah, Dale Collins swore us to secrecy on pain of torture.
Yes.
That if anything anything that's spoken of in a one-on-one stays in a one-on-one. It's kind of like Las Vegas, but less scuzzy.
Yeah, the bottom line on one-on-ones is they are absolutely confidential, and it is entirely up to you, the attendee, as to what you want to talk about. Now, at least speaking to my own experience with them, most people want to talk to me about their investments and where they are in the financial part of their journey, but not always. I mean, I had one guy in Greece who said, "I've read your book. I've read the blog. I'm on the path. I've got everything lined up with VTSAX. I just wanted to hang out and chat for an hour." So we just shot the breeze for an hour, and I'm fine with that.
Yep.
So whatever you, the attendee, want to bring to the table is fine. And if you want to bring charts and graphs and details like Alan and Katie did, that's great. If you just want to chat, that's great. Anything in between, it's up to you. But whatever happens in one-on-one is confidential, and it's a safe space for those people who participate.
And going back to the naked comment, maybe we should launch Chautauqua After Dark event that is anyway. Bobby,
we had an interesting question from Bobby Lee.
That's a good segue, JL, because you mentioned VTSAX. Bobby says, I've been hearing in FI circles about the simple path versus the optimal path to wealth, meaning the latter is investing in other equities other than VTI or VTSAX. So what do you think about that, JL?
Well, I think the simple path to wealth is the optimal path to wealth. So I disagree that there's their choice there. I've said before on many occasions that if I thought there were a better, more powerful way to invest that required a little more effort, then that's what I would have written about. But the simple path to wealth that I write about is not only has the virtue of simplicity, and that virtue is extraordinarily powerful, but it also has the virtue of being the most effective way you can invest. There might be rare occasions where somebody does better. Certainly, if you look back for the last 5 or 10 years, and you compare investing in VTSAX, which is the one I recommend, it's the Total Stock Market Index Fund, and you compare it with 9 or 10 other investments you could have made 5 or 10 years ago, VTSAX will not be number one. But the point is, you didn't know 5 or 10 years ago which of those other 9 would be number one. And VTSAX will always be doing very well. And over time, it will perform better and better as others that are number one then drop back to number 2 or whatever. So it is both the simplest and, in my view, the most optimal way to invest.
I love that. And I've been inspired as well. Recently, there's a brand new book come out called Trillions, which is all about the story of how index funds came to be and the renegade band of people that put together index funds in the early days. And after reading that, I'm just inspired that is the way to go. Over the long run, you cannot predict. It's an incredible book. Moving on to the next question.
Well, there's a few Chautauqua specific questions that I'll just whiz off quickly. So Mark says, how many people attend a Chautauqua? It's limited to 30 attendees per week to have that kind of intimate feeling where you get to chat to everyone and you're spending a week together and eating all meals together. And that's the beauty of Chautauqua. And Kevin says, what's the best way to connect and get to know others from our week prior to the event? We set up a Facebook group. I know not everyone is a fan of Facebook. We found it the best way for people to chat to each other before the event. So even if it means like having just a shell account that you can log in and join the group, that's how we found the best way to chat.
And then there's a question from Mark Franks that says, also, if my spouse is not as interested in finances as I am, would there be other things for her to do during certain talks?
Certain talks. So she'll come to some, but not others. Which ones is she coming to?
Be judged here. Christian Price, what's your view on spouses and partners that are not as interested in finances as others?
The funny thing is, one of the Chautauquans that we're actually staying with right now, that we're hanging out together, he was what we like to call the reluctant spouse. That's our endearing term for it. And he said that originally he wasn't interested in Chautauqua at all, and she was doing everything, and she had to really convince him to jump on board. But now he is one of the biggest fanboys ever for Chautauqua. So if you have a spouse that is not willing, like not interested in finance at all, Shetakwa is the perfect place to bring them, because it's not just like spreadsheets that you're showing them. It's not just a blog online. It's actually living, breathing people that are there for you, and they actually really care about you. And it completely changes your outlook on what FI is and what this community is. So that is basically what a reluctant spouse is, or a drag along spouse. And Chautauqua is the perfect place for them to come to see what actual financial independence is.
Yeah, we actually have a pretty good track record of, I guess, getting people like converting the reluctant drag along spouses.
I'm not sure about
sound like
word,
a cult.
Bryce.
Yeah, okay. Actually, funny story. One of them actually, we had one spouse that actually thought we were a cult, and it was kind of like Tony Robbins conversion,
like standing in the back, crossing his arms. Like when's the sales pitch coming up?
Yeah, ready to like stab somebody as soon as we try to like brand them or something like that. But what inevitably ends up happening is either people come to this fire space not interested. Some come even suspicious of us or of the fire space, or like, you know, just bored and thinking we're a bunch of spreadsheet nerds. And then they come and then find out that we're just a bunch of regular people that just want to help people. We don't have anything to like. We're not trying to like.
There's no agenda.
There's no agenda. We really just want you to be happy. We want you to be wealthy. And when they see that, it really kind of flips something in their brain and says, oh, these people are not nearly as intimidating as I thought they were. And then they become really interested, and in many cases, actually, some of our biggest fans that come from these reluctant spouses, which I wasn't expecting, but I always found one of the best sources of joy from doing this, that we get to one of the biggest like upsides that we get from this, which is we get to introduce people in a way that a blog normally wouldn't.
We actually have one such partner on the call. Jason said, I am the drag along reluctant spouse. Still looking forward to meeting you. And you're like, the fact that you're tuning into this, you're not reluctant. What are you talking about?
We did have a message from Maria as well, saying she missed out on buying a ticket. I'm sorry, Maria. But are we expecting 2023 to Chautauqua to be in South America? Interesting question. The honest answer is, we don't know. So far, we've been to the UK, Greece, Portugal, and Colombia, and we've been traveling around the world. And I think
the question is, where are we going to go next on our travels? And it will probably be there, because we fell in love with Colombia when we were on our own travels. So maybe just follow us around the world, and that might give you a clue as to where.
Actually, funny story. Where is everybody right now? Alan, Katie?
We're in Mexico.
We are in Mexico on the beach at Puerto Vallarta.
We are in Portugal, in the Azores, which is an island in the middle of the Atlantic. So we're in Portugal right now. Jim, where are you?
I'm in Southwest Utah.
So in actuality, all of us are actually nomadic right now. We've all decided, we've all for some strange reason decided to all start traveling and being nomadic together. And one of the great cool things about this is we go and see interesting places, and when we encounter something really interesting, we naturally want to bring people along, right? So I mean, that's kind of how we found all these cool places that we went to in the past. So we can't predict where it's going to be, but we can guarantee that it's going to be somewhere cool, because that's how we pick it. Like we go to a place and we go, this is amazing, what if we did Chautauqua here? And then Alan and Katie make it happen.
That's an important point, that everywhere we go, every time we choose a venue, we don't choose and book a venue unless some of our team has actually been there and stayed there and experienced it firsthand.
Yeah.
So we don't log on the computer and look at pictures and say, oh, that might be nice. We actually only go to places that we have that some member or members of our team have personal experience with.
Yeah.
In this case, like in Portugal, it was Christian Price who did the scouting. In this case, it's Alan and Katie.
Yeah.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
But we're never gonna do this in like in like a Super 8 motel off of like a highway or something like that. It's gonna be awesome. We deliberately picked these places to have wow factor, and Alan and Katie, like we've seen like they've been to this the place that we're going to go. I'll be going to Colombia, and this place has wow factor. So I mean, like that's what we look for. Our job is to surprise and delight you every year. So so prepare to be surprised and delighted.
Whilst also simultaneously lowering your expectations so that you can be wowed.
So we have a question from Deanna, which I think will add value to everyone. We've spoken a lot in the blog posts that you've written about the importance of community. And Deanna asks, what other FI events do you recommend? I see a ton out there, but paying for events seems anti-FI, which I'd love to handle that one. I'm not sure which are legitimate or worthwhile. Do you have any thoughts, JL, Christian, Bryce, before I pile in with a lot of thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just briefly say I don't understand why paying for an event is anti-FI. I mean, it's just that that's a mindset that I can't wrap my head around. Chautauqua, and this is not just my opinion, is widely considered to be the premier event. It is certainly, I don't know that it's the most expensive event, but it's certainly not the least expensive, because we're doing it to make it as cool as possible, not to a certain price, because everybody's financial situation is different and money is relative. So what's expensive to one person is pocket change to another person. So it's impossible for us to say this is the right price for everybody. So again, Chautauqua is not for everybody. We only have 60 seats. We can't begin to accommodate the number of people who want to come to it. In terms of other events, I've been to Camp FI, which was very different experience, much shorter, far greater number of people, but it was great. I haven't been to Economy, but that's a much bigger event, but I've heard great things about it, and it's on my agenda to get there.
I've heard great things about Diana's Economy conference, and actually there are plenty of free meetups around the world as well.
That's true too.
FI has an incredible list of local Facebook groups, and one thing I would say to everyone listening to this is, just like JL said right at the start, do not wait for something to happen. If there is no event in your local FI Facebook group, create one, invite people along, build it. You can build community. So like Deanna, like if you're at the start of your journey, if you're paying off expensive debt, invite the local FI Facebook group to the park and hang out with them and play a board game or do something like that, or have some fun that way. There are so many ways to connect with community and build it around the world. And I think, I would say to you, please go out there and make it happen. How do you know that it's legit? Like, I think look for the names and the speakers that you trust, the JL Collins, the Millennial Revolution, the Mad Scientist, look for those people that you really want to connect, because they don't tend to go to the events that are scammy. And for me, paying for events, like when I could afford it, it's added so much value to my life, meeting the real people. Yeah. So there's some thoughts. Katie, what's the next question on our list?
Leela, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, says, how has travel and nomadic living been during COVID times with travel restrictions? Have you changed? Not great. how you travel.
Well, I think it's quite interesting because it used to be this was the question that would get handed to Christy and Bryce.
I'd
But
like
actually,
to tackle
we're the
this one.
ones that have been traveling.
I want to tackle this one.
You-
So we chose.
We're not bitter at all. Not
Yeah.
bitter.
We chose to become nomadic in January 2020.
Worst timing ever.
That's potentially the worst time on record to do such a thing.
We convinced them
so
to
we
do
had-
that right when the pandemic hit too.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce. So
You're welcome.
we had 2 glorious months in 2020. We spent January in Thailand with Christy and Bryce hanging out. And then February, we headed to the States. And then we all know what happened in like February, March 2020. So we retreated back to the UK for 5 months and then tentatively headed back out on the road in September 2020. And we definitely chose countries or chose where to go, not based on like our burning desires, but more like, where do we feel safe? Where are the numbers lowest? All these kind of factors that we never thought we'd consider. And we chose Germany, which we would not have, I mean, it's not on most people's travel hit list. But we're like, Germans are safe. We can go there.
Germans are safe. Yeah, that's
and efficient.
That's not that lucky.
And all the other stereotypes about all other countries.
We love Germany. We love Germans.
Well, like that's why we chose
Yes.
to go there, because we thought we'd feel safe, and we did. But then we got locked down there as well. So then from then we've been moving around based on more, looking at restrictions and where would let us in first of all, and where there's some vague sense of normal life going on.
Yeah, nomadic travel during pandemic was like there are some people that will still continue to do that. It was extremely difficult.
Travel on hard mode.
It was travel on hard. It was travel on hard mode, and a lot of countries, like the tourism industry, completely shut down. Like there were people that were like, nomadic travel just wasn't the same, even if you forced a way through it. Like if there were people that we knew that chose to stay in Thailand when COVID first started spreading, and Thailand was the second country that was affected by this thing, and they would just be like everything that they loved about Thailand just wasn't there because the night market shut down, the beaches were empty, the malls were closed, everything was locked down, and you had to like buy groceries and cook at home. So it absolutely wasn't the same. But what the travel environment that we're even seeing right now is way different from when we were from in 2020 and 2021. Countries are starting to drop restrictions. Like right now we're in Portugal, and literally just today, Portugal announced that they were dropping like entry requirements for like testing and stuff like that. If you're vaccinated, that's okay.
Good enough. Yeah.
The UK is now opened up. I believe Greece just announced that they're going to be dropping it soon. Norway, Sweden are dropping it soon. So gradually life is coming back to normal, and nomadic travel is now becoming possible again. And that's kind of why we're in Portugal right now. We literally just went back to nomadic life like a week ago, and it's just as awesome as we remember it. And we're
cautiously optimistic.
We're cautiously optimistic,
yeah.
But
I think our plans have kind of changed from before, where we would be like hopping countries to countries, especially in Europe. But now it's more like, okay, let's try to stay in one place longer and see what's happening with the restrictions before we decide to like hop around and just kind of go day by day, because the restrictions are always changing. Things are always changing. You want to be doing long-term travel rather than short-term travel.
And that's the reason why we didn't do Chautauquas for the last 2 years. It just wasn't a responsible thing to do, first of all, because we didn't want anyone to get sick. And just imagining the headache of people trying to fly into a place like the UK, and then like the week before the UK moves the US from orange to purple or whatever the heck that system was, and then everything would just like blow up, and then all of a sudden like half our attendees couldn't come. It just wasn't a good idea. We're only doing this now because we're much more confident that that things are safer now, that Colombia is not going to reimpose like travel restrictions. And again, everyone that is coming to Chautauqua, they have to be vaccinated, right? I mean, like they have to be vaccinated because we want it to be safe. So
also Colombia requires it.
And also Colombia requires
it. It's actually the Colombian government says you have to be vaccinated to go into the country, exactly the same as the US says to foreigners you have to be vaccinated
Which
to go into the country.
Just quickly following up on that, Michelle said, why did you choose a country that has a vaccine requirement? It was more the other way around. We chose the country that we like, and then they just had the requirements that they had.
Yes, and actually a large number of countries has exactly the same requirement. So it is what it is. We didn't decide on that rule. We spent 2 months there last year and we had a fabulous time. I do want to, Deanna asked a fabulous follow-up question on nomadic life, and then we've got a couple of other questions. If you've asked questions in the chat, don't worry, I'm looking at them. We will get to them. Deanna said, did you ever doubt nomadic travel during the pandemic and second guess your lifestyle?
Who, us? No, we knew it would eventually, pandemics eventually end, and we knew that we eventually would go back onto the road. If anything, being trapped in one country during the pandemic made us miss it all the more. We just couldn't, we were just waiting for the travel situation to improve again to where we can resume our nomadic awesome lifestyle.
I think what it showed us was that how resilient the FIRE lifestyle is, because people were saying, oh, pandemic, if anything bad happens, like the stock market crashes and you have to go back home and everything's going to be expensive, then you have to find a job and then this FIRE thing is not going to work. All those things actually happened. We couldn't stay in Thailand to decrease our costs. The stock market did crash in March of 2020. We had to go back home, and we didn't have to go find a job. Our cost actually plummeted. So even going back to as expensive place as Toronto, because part of the reason we went back was also family reasons, not 100% due to the pandemic. And we were actually able to live still on $40,000 a year in Toronto because rents were dropping so quickly that landlords were offering like 2 months of free rent, and the Airbnbs were plummeting in cost. So what it actually did was made me realize that because we're so flexible and because we're financially independent, there's actually many different ways that makes you quite resilient to shocks like this. So even though we couldn't stay in Thailand, we went back home, we did a bit of traveling within Canada, and then now things are opening back up so we can go back on the road.
The fact that all 5 people on this call right now made it out, made it through the pandemic, financially unscathed or even better than when we started, and we're all back on the road again and living nomadic life is a ringing endorsement of the lifestyle that we chose. I mean, it worked out beautifully, and we couldn't be happy.
And even it doesn't have to be black and white either, right? You don't have to be constantly traveling. People are like, oh, nomadic lifestyle, does that mean I have to be moving Airbnbs every week? I don't want that. That's too stressful. It's no, you could actually choose to just be nomadic in the way that you have maybe a home base somewhere where when it's comfortable, you're there when it's warm, and then you fly to another place and split your time between North America, Europe when it's nice, and get away from winter and then come back. I think JL, you have a home base, but you're actually nomadic right now because you locked up Kabanda for the winter and you're actually traveling to warmer places, right? So for your lifestyle, it doesn't have to be 100%, okay, I have to be traveling every 2 weeks and throughout the entire 365 days of the year. You have found a perfect way to experience the best weather and the best flexibility for your lifestyle.
Yeah, we actually don't think of it as having a home base. We do have a cottage on Lake Michigan in Wisconsin, but we think of it as just one more stop in our nomadic travels. Now, when COVID shut everything down, we happened to be in Denver at the time, and it was awfully nice to have that cottage to go back to because restaurants shut down, hotels were shutting down. It made our lifestyle very difficult. So we went back to Kabanda, is what we call the cabin, and we were there for 18 consecutive months, which when we bought the place, we never dreamed we would spend that long a period of time. But it was sure nice to have it at that point. And if you have to wait out a plague, doing it on the shores of Lake Michigan is a pretty sweet way to do it. And then as of November 1st, we went back on the road again, and we're back out picking up our travels out here in the West where we had left off. And so Kabanda, we'll be back in Kabanda for a couple months in the summer, and then we'll be going to Columbia for Chautauqua, and then we'll be actually traveling in the southeast of the U.S. for the next fall and winter of next year. So, yeah, I don't know if we're going to keep Kabanda. In fact, I was on the verge of selling it until the pandemic hit, and suddenly it took on a whole new level of convenience and importance.
So I've got one comment from us, and then I'll hand it over to Katie for the next question. The comment for us, the answer to that question, did we ever doubt our nomadic travel during the pandemic, was no. Actually, the opposite. Seeing everyone else locked down in our home country inspired us not to want to go back.
There was some guilt there.
There was some guilt. But moving on from that, because that's my quick answer, question from Dewanglu. I probably butchered your name and I apologize.
They say, don't take this the wrong way, but is there a profit being made off of the Chautauqua events? I have no problem if there is. JL, do you want to take this one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a profit being made. This is a for-profit venture. I believe in profit-based businesses. I think for a couple of reasons. One, it's a measure of success. One, it's a margin to cover you in case something unforeseen and negative happens. And the other thing is there's an awful lot of hard work that goes into this, and we want to get paid. So yes, it's absolutely a profit-based endeavor.
We are all capitalists. We believe in capital and profit-based. I mean, like our like VTSAX is based off of a profit-driven business model. It's something that we obviously believe in, and it allows us to run the best event that we can, which is why we structure it the way that we.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely a capitalist. Now, I will say that this is also Chautauqua was a terrible business model, and what I mean,
yes, it is.
I wasn't expecting you to say that, but I really want to hear the follow-up.
Well, let me explain. And so it's a terrible business model because I didn't create it to make money. I created it as a profit business, but that wasn't my reason for creating. My reason for creating it was to go to cool places, hang out with cool people, and have cool conversations. What makes it a terrible business model is the fact that to do that effectively, we have to limit the number of attendees, right? So to really make the magic of Chautauqua is that we limit it to 30 people, and it lasts for a week, and that allows these 30 people to really get to know each other and really bond, and the kinds of things that you've heard Alan and Katie and Christy and Bryce talk about, the relationships come out of that dynamic. If we really wanted to maximize profit, I would have created an event where there was no limit to the number of attendees. We have something like 5,000 attendees on our mailing list. We could probably do a Chautauqua with 1,000 people, and that would certainly be far more lucrative, but it wouldn't be a Chautauqua. So the only way to scale up Chautauqua is to do more weeks of Chautauqua. And again, we're all retired. We all have other things we're doing with our lives. Putting on Chautauqua, even for 2 weeks, is an enormous amount of work. So it's really not a scalable business. So that's what I mean when I say it's a terrible business model. And because of that, the profit it makes is pretty modest. But on the other hand, that allows it to be the kind of event that it is. And it's for that reason that it is the premier event in the FI community, and why people are so anxious to come to it. So, in fact, I had to write a post about how to construct businesses with terrible, unscalable models.
That should be your next book.
So 2 quick fire questions, which we'll answer, and then I've got an actual finance question, which I'm excited about. Is this the fastest selling Chautauqua ever? Yes.
Yeah.
What percentage of 2022 attendees?
Before you go on, Alan, I will make a point that every Chautauqua, without exception, at least to the best of my memory, has sold out a little quicker than the one before it. The very first one took 3 weeks to sell out. And then I think the following year took 2 weeks. And then the next year it was a week. And so every single Chautauqua has just sold out more quickly than the one before.
If we extrapolated, the next one should sell out before we actually go live on the tickets. So we're about to cross the space-time continuum with the next one. So I'm excited about that.
Do not break the multiverse.
I can't. It's going to happen.
So the question from Gary was, what percentage of 2022 attendees have attended before?
I think it's about 20%.
Yeah, it's about 20% of attendees have attended before. And it's actually quite a nice mix, having people who've attended before who can, it brings a nice mix and flavor to the event.
On to the finance question.
Yes, so Bobby Lee, and I'm sure you've all got opinions on this, which I'm very looking forward to hear. COVID has parlayed into inflation. What advice do you have to help get us through skyrocketing costs and our declining portfolio investments?
Well, I just wrote an entire post about that, so you can just check that out first.
It was a very good post. I enjoyed that one, Bryce.
Thank you. I'm sure Jim. Okay, why don't I throw it over to Jim, because my thoughts are already on the internet.
So first of all, I would say that nobody's portfolio has declined all that much. I'm a little amused at how panicked people are by this relatively small drop in the equity markets. I think it touched down at about a 10% decline at one point, which is a correction. Corrections are very common in the market.
Yep.
I think the market's bounced back a bit now, and it's maybe down 5, 6, 7%, something like this. This is very mild. I would say if this is bothering you, if this kind of decline is keeping you up at night, then you probably want to rethink being in stocks, because it can, and at some point in time, will be much, much worse. I'm not saying that's in the immediate future, because I don't know. Nobody knows. But 10% corrections are common. 20% corrections, bear markets, are less common, but they are a regular event. And of course, crashes are also a regular event, still less common. The important thing that investors need to understand is that's the nature of the beast. This is like living in New England and being shocked by blizzards. I mean, blizzards can be very uncomfortable. They can be dangerous, but they are part of living in New England. If you live in Florida, you shouldn't be shocked at the occasional hurricane. Again, very dangerous, very uncomfortable, never lasts, and it's part of the environment, if you will. So you should expect the market to periodically plunge 10, 20 or more percent. So that's number one. Number two, if you own assets, which people on the FI path by definition own, whether it's stocks or real estate or any other tangible asset, you have a built-in inflation hedge. And inflation isn't going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt any of the five of us, because we all have assets. Unfortunately, the real tragedy of inflation is it tends to hurt people without assets, which means it tends to hurt the poorest people in the society. And that's one of the reasons that inflation is such a horrific thing. But for people who own assets, it's, unless we get hyperinflation, which is a very rare condition, and there's really nothing that protects you from that, inflation for people with assets is not a big deal. If you don't have assets, if you're working paycheck to paycheck, then those are the people who get hurt.
To that point, I just want to mention that I've noticed that the personal inflation of the FIRE community is very different from the inflation statistics that they put out in the news. And the basket of goods that they use to actually figure out what that inflation number is actually includes a lot of things that are no longer impact people who no longer have to work a 9-to-5 job. Like, for example, like gasoline, driving, that's a huge part of it. Commuting to and from work, it's very expensive to actually work. And people don't realize that until after they leave their jobs. And one of the things we noticed during the pandemic, even after the inflationary period has come in, is that because we don't need to work, we don't actually need to drive anywhere. Like the small amount of subways that we had to take to get groceries or go see our family, it did not impact our overall expenses at all. In terms of housing, because we have the flexibility of not having to live in an expensive city and can move anywhere, and we don't have to live downtown within 10 minutes of walking distance to work, that allowed us to pick up a lot of low rents, which other people don't have the ability to do. And then on top of that, food, when I was working, there was a lot of eating out because I simply just did not have time or energy to cook. So that actually inflates a lot of my expenses as well. But because we were able to actually just cook most of the time, the personal inflation numbers of the fireys, and not just ourselves, but other Chautauquans that we've talked to as well, we've actually been tracking our expenses this entire time in Portugal. And it's just, you're not actually that susceptible to inflation if you have the ability to be location independent. You don't even have to be nomadic, just being location independent. Like one of the Chautauquans we're staying with right now, she's working from home. So she's not completely FI yet, but just being able to be location independent makes a big difference in terms of your inflation numbers and how it protects you from inflation that other people would have to experience.
Question, Katie.
Next question. This comes from Jose. It's sort of about your target for FIRE and knowing when to pull the trigger. He says he has a long list of 12 cities in the world where he would like to retire, all at very different price points. So would you FIRE when you can afford one, all, some of them, or do you travel to all of them and average it out? How would you know when you can actually FIRE?
I've got one thought before. I'm sure Christy and Bryce have loads of thoughts. Is actually, so we fired before we could afford to be FI anywhere in the world. Our target was $1 million invested so we could live off 40 grand a year. And because it's British pounds, that gave us a lot of options, but there was no way.
This is your opportunity to like talk about the Canadian dollar.
No, let's not mention how bad the Canadian dollar is.
Again.
Again, every call.
Every damn time.
We were not FI New York level. We were not FI Seattle, or we were not FI LA. We were not
Central London,
or Central London, or we were definitely not Denmark FI. But actually, being FI and then traveling to Colombia and Thailand and different places, our investments have continued to grow to a point where we have become financially independent for nearly all cities now. So it's quite interesting. Our experiences of having left before we've got to the point where we can be FI wherever we wanted, the growth of the stocks and shares and our controlled spending has meant we've ended up that way anyway.
You know, taking that point and going to our questioner, one of the strategies, well, what was the questioner's name, Katie?
Jose.
One of the strategies Jose could use if he's financially independent for the cheapest of the 12 cities is start now, go to the cheapest of the 12 cities, let your portfolio build like you and Alan have, and then go to the next one that is you can work your way up through the list. I think the first thing I would, if I were having a one-on-one with Jose, the first question I'd ask him is, how do you feel about your job? And if Jose were to say, I love it, I'm having a great time at my work, I'd say, keep at it then and keep enjoying it and keep building your investments until you can go to half those cities or all those cities. On the other hand, if Jose was saying, it's killing me, it's destroying my soul, I can't wait to be gone, I'd say do what Alan and Katie did, pull the trigger and go and figure it out as you go along. Let's suppose that you need $50,000, which implies at using the 25% 25 time multiple, that you need $1.5 million and you only have $1 million. And you'll say, well, gee, it's a long time to get that next $500,000 to get me to that $1.5 million and the 50,000. My question to you would be, could you figure out a way to make an extra $10,000 during the course of a year? I think if you've gotten to the point where you have $1 million, my guess is you probably could. So go ahead, pull the trigger, take the 40,000 your million provides you, and then figure out a way to make the other 10,000. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that, those are all great questions, and you kind of just said a lot of the stuff that I was going to say. But to Jose directly, you're going to be just fine, because that is a question that someone would ask if they have a giant spreadsheet of all of the living expenses in all these cities, and they're throwing it into formulas that are in Excel that are like max, min, average, and they're looking at it going, I don't know which one is the right one, right? That's the like that person is going to be just fine on this whole fire journey, because that person understands the math and understands the cost of living, like adjustments that happen when you go to different cities, and the advantages that come from nomadic living. But like, just to the point of the of Alan and Katie and JL, like, the thing about financial independence is not an on and off switch. Once you get there, once you get close to it, like, it's about giving you freedom, and freedom is not a like all or nothing kind of thing. As you get up, as your net worth increases, you get more freedom and you get more choices. And it really is like, once you are comfortable, if you're comfortable and you are okay with living in that, the min number of the city, go for it, right? Because it's all about what is right for you. There is no one answer for everybody, because some people have to retire, like are trying to do FI in LA, and some people are like us, are fine doing FI in Thailand. There's no one right answer, and you really kind of have to figure out what is the right lifestyle that you want to support, and nobody else can answer that. And the only way to find out whether you can actually do it is to give it a go, to try it, right? I mean, like, and as soon as you can start to try it, I'd encourage people to try it as soon as possible, because once you taste that freedom, you're not going to want to go back.
People ask me, do you miss your job? And I'm like, no bleeping way. Like,
well, I think the comment I have in my head is a saying that my wife likes to scream at me at the top of her lungs regularly, which is, it's not binary.
Oh, that one.
Yes, that one. And it's not, you're either financially independent or you're not. There are many different ways to do this. So I think keep that in mind. It's not a 1 or a 0 thing.
Jose says it's actually the job of his dreams. I think the thing with FI is, like, you don't have to quit your job. This isn't about forcing people to quit your job if you're financially independent. If you love the job, feel free to keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, just like,
yep. It's freedom, baby. Yeah.
It's freedom. So we've got a question from Chris Beeden, which is, if you are FI, how do you make the leap and quit a well-paid job? It's so tough.
There's templates of resignation letters I can send you. It really is just one line. It's not that hard.
I found the universe tested me when I quit my job.
Yes.
So I quit, and it was a very well-paid job. I didn't love it, so it was okay. Like, I quite enjoyed it, so it was easier for me to leave. But then every time, like, I made a step to show that I was moving further away from working, for example, I got rid of my work clothes. The very next day, I got a call from my ex-boss saying, do you want to come back and do a contract for 3 months?
For a very highly paid contract. It was like, come back.
And it's like, are you sure you've got rid of those clothes, but you could get them back? And that happened at least 2 or 3 times. It was really interesting. I just had more excitement for what I could do with my freedom, like the freedom of doing what I want. And like I said just now, the thought of going back to work and having to work on someone else's schedule, like, the thought horrifies me.
I think we have both the scenario of, like, I hated my job, but then you actually loved your job. Yeah. So it was actually like golden handcuffs. But for me, it was like easier to walk away. But even then I was like, oh, I'm going to be so happy the day I quit. It's going to be the best day of my life. And then the day I actually gave in my resignation, I was like having a mini panic attack, because I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? Because even if you don't like your job, it's when it's so ingrained as part of your identity for 10 years, you're still like, who am I now? Like, I didn't want that identity, but I need another identity. Like, what do I do with myself? So especially being an anxious, pessimistic person. For me, it wasn't until we started traveling and I started packing things away that I got really excited. And I was like, okay, I'm running towards something better. It's not just escaping from something I don't like. And then for you, it's even harder because your job paid well and you liked it. So how did you do it?
Well, I mean, like, just because you quit your job doesn't mean you can't go back. I mean, like, if you were good enough at your job and you were highly skilled enough to get to FI in the first place, don't think of it as a leaping off of a bridge or something like that. You can't go back, or this kind of thing. You can always go back if you take 6 months off, take a year off, go travel the world, go be nomadic, go do the thing. And if you don't like it, just go back. It's okay. I'm not going to judge you. No one's going to judge you. It's fine. You do you, baby. But it's FIRE is all about choices, and but you don't want to be on your deathbed, thinking, oh, if only I had the courage to try this, but I didn't. Just try it, and if you don't like it, go back. There's no shame in that. But don't leave any rocks unturned. Don't leave any dreams unchased. If you have the option and the freedom to do it, go for it. And if it doesn't, and if you find out that you don't like it as much as you do, you can always go back.
So maybe do it in a nice way. I'm imagining Bryce's templates for the resignation involve some 4-letter words and expletives.
No, not at all.
If you leave your job on nice terms, then and they like you, and presumably you're doing a good job because they're paying you a lot of money, leave that door open and be like, okay, I can always come back.
My resignation letter, I actually wrote a haiku about how much that was the best job I ever had, and how much I appreciated my boss, and how much I appreciated everything they did, and I thanked them profusely, because it was really just a positive experience. And I'm still good friends with my boss now. I just actually met him.
Yeah, we actually had lunch recently,
and he is now going nomadic, and he's
he wants to do world schooling.
And he's coming along with us now. Yeah. So we managed to turn him.
Bryce, would you care to share that haiku with us?
I think I still have it. Yeah, I don't have it right now. It's buried somewhere, but I think I still have it.
So, a change of tack. I think this one's for JL, and then we'll come back to some other bits. Nicole Cooper asked, any recommendations for calculators that help determine your FI number if you have inaccessible retirement accounts that are more than enough to cover you to get from 60 to death? It's just you need to cover from now until 60. And she hasn't put her age, but any thoughts on that sort of calculation of what you need to get to the inaccessible accounts?
Yeah, on my blog, there's a page marked for calculators, and my memory's not good enough to name or even suggest one that might account for that. But I think that people obsess about that a little bit too much. So first of all, the Mad Scientist has some great posts on how to withdraw money from retirement accounts before the age of 59 if you need to. But the other thing to understand is, and again, we don't know how much money this person has or how many years, but if you have some money that's outside of retirement accounts, you can spend that down to zero, getting yourself to age 59 and a half, because while you're doing that, the retirement accounts will be replacing the money that you're spending, just as if you were drawing it from one big pot, it would be being replaced. So I think it's a pretty simple mathematical calculation. Look at how much is outside your retirement accounts, what kind of expected growth rate you have on it, how much you intend to withdraw from it, and see if it lasts you until 59 and a half. And again, I would go back to either the Mad Scientist articles on how to pull from your other accounts, or you could say, I'm coming up $10,000 a year short in those later years. Is there a way you could figure out how to make $10,000 in those years? So,
or come to Shetakwa, and then we'll run.
We'll just do it for you.
We'll just do it for you. That's actually the exact kind of thing that we that's kind of like our speciality and one-on-ones. From personal experience, I haven't actually found a scenario in which there's so much money in like an inaccessible account that actually prevents you from doing it. There's always a way to either use Roth IRA conversion ladders, or a strategy that we like to call a cash asset swap to get money out of your inaccessible account in order for it to spend during retirement. So there's always a solution. Come to Chautauqua and we'll find it.
Yeah, because I can relate, because I have a part of the money that was in locked in retirement account that I can't access until I was 55. Until I'm 55. So we actually use the cash asset swap to get it out. So we can explain that to you.
Yep.
And the other final thought that I'd leave on this is people make this into a bigger monster than it is. Even if you had a scenario where all of your money was in tax advantaged accounts, and you had to pull it in order to live between the time you retired and the time you turned 59 and a half. Well, when you pull that money out at any point, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So that's a given. The only difference is if you pull it out before 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty. Now, obviously, you don't want to pay that if you don't have to, and you can use some of these other strategies that we've been talking about to avoid it. But even if you couldn't avoid it, 10% is not the end of the world if it really gets you to the better, freer life that you want to start having right now.
Yeah.
I love American taxes.
Forgive my smirk. In the UK, I believe it's 50%.
Yeah, the penalty is 55% in the UK as opposed to your 10. So, like, yeah, you Americans, we love.
Well, that's why we had the revolution and left the.
let's not go there, Joe.
Let's not go there.
That's why we left the empire. Your tax
the evil empire
structure is crazy.
Yeah.
We had a question from Heather. Any tips for gently introducing spouses to the concept of nomadic reduced work lifestyle?
As opposed to violently introducing them to it?
Gently introducing them.
Okay.
So any tips for gently introducing spouses to the concept of nomadic / reduced work lifestyle?
I don't think we're all that gentle, so I'm not sure this is a good question for us.
We have this strategy that we have to call aggressive relaxation, where if you're in a scenario, actually the one of the people that we're hanging out with right now was exactly one of the scenarios where one person is totally into the fire thing and the other person is like, this is a terrible idea, I want to keep working and that doesn't feel safe. I gently suggest to them that when they're FI, that when the spouse that's into it is FI, they are going to do the FI thing and then aggressively relax around the other spouse, like wake up at 10:30, play video games all day while they're going to meetings, go, where are you going to today? Work? Oh, that's a shame. Like within 6 months, they come around real fast.
Yeah. That's not that gentle. Do you have any ideas?
I have a gentle idea. Actually, my gentle ideas are, for me, it's about finding out what your partner or spouse really wants to do. Like, what have they always dreamed to do, but they haven't been able to because of work? Where do they really want to go? Who do they want to meet? And really understanding what drives them, and maybe them themselves, they've never really thought of that. So if you can ask them those questions, get them inspired and thinking about the future, I think that's a way to bring them on that journey, rather than what we've seen other people do is force their version of what fire should be on their partner. Find out what their version of fire is, what would inspire them, what would get them going. I think that would be a great way to do it.
Actually, to Alan's point, I actually got this exercise idea from Alan, was like every now and then we do a priorities exercise to see what our values are and whether it's aligned. And sometimes you realize that there's like things that you're worried about spending money on, and it's actually totally aligned with your values and you shouldn't be worrying at all. And then there's other times in which you're spending money, you're like, why am I spending money on this? Like, I don't even care about this thing. I'm just doing it because other people are doing it. This doesn't make any sense. And then just having, like, knowing what is actually important to you and what is aligned in terms of with your values will show you the way of whether FI makes sense for you and where your money is going. Like just being on the same page. And we really like using Post-its. We got that from Alan. We brought a whole bunch of Post-its with us whenever we travel now, is like writing it down on Post-it notes, what you actually value in different areas of your life, in your relationships. What do you value in terms of finances? What do you value in terms of health and fitness? What do you value in terms of health, like eating healthy and things like that? And then you can actually figure out like what it is that your spouse wants to do and what is it that you want to do and where do you align and where are your differences, and then figure out how to actually design your life that is aligned with your values, and then spend money according to your values. And then that's how you get happiness.
Right. What you're looking for are incongruencies in how your spouse, what their values are and how they actually behave and spend the money and that kind of thing. Because it is far more powerful to get them to align their behavior with their own values than to get them to align their behavior to your values, right? Because then now they own the solution, right? So it's so that was actually a very valuable thing that the guys taught us, and we love doing it now. So because it's a really useful exercise to do, and not a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about like, hey, you know, I'm working this job, but why am I working this job? Am I just doing this because I'm afraid? Because that's not the best reason to do really anything, because you're afraid of some of the alternative, especially if you can remove that fear, then all of a sudden the log jam starts to break up, and then things become a lot easier. So yeah, that's kind of what we encourage people to do now.
I love that. So we've got a question from Lisa Mills.
Before that, Guy had a cool follow-up comment. He said he tried gentle, not even aggressive relaxation, but every time he does that, his wife finds something like a chore for him to do. If you're so relaxed, you can like do the shopping, clean the house, blah blah blah. Okay, so
we've got a question from Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
And then we've got Airline Shea afterwards. We'll come to your question.
So this is directed towards the Millennial Revolution. If you were going to do a 3-month sabbatical in either Thailand or Portugal, which would you choose and why?
Why do you have to choose? That's my question. Why do you have to choose? It's not binary.
Right now it's whoever will let us.
Whichever one is open and lets you in with a vaccine certificate.
Which is why we're in Portugal right now, because they let us in. But there are no wrong answers on this thing.
I love both of them.
I love both.
I do.
Of them.
I really do.
I really do. There's things to love about both countries, and that's why we are spending so much time in both. But it's kind of like kids. I can't just pick one. I have to I can't just pick one or the other. And when you're nomadic, you don't have to. So you can spend a few months in Europe and then a bunch of months in Southeast Asia. That's kind of how our lifestyle was before the pandemic, and what we're going back to now.
I would say if you're trying to highlight some differences between the two, like Portugal is better for nature. I think Thailand is really good for food and also depends on if you're into like Thailand can get really, really hot. So like if you want temperature that's like more like, for example, we're in Azores right now, which is the island between North America and Europe, an island of Portugal, and the temperature is like pretty mild. It doesn't get super hot or super cold. So if you're not into extreme temperatures, maybe Thailand might be a bit hot for you. So kind of like if you want to emphasize more for temperature or for nature, you may want to pick Portugal over Thailand. Yeah, Thailand is really good for food.
Yeah,
and massages.
And massages, yes.
Massages.
Say it right.
We've got a question from Arlene. Maybe JL, you can answer.
I called airline earlier.
Yeah, I realised.
Apologise profusely. Someone
sat airline. Wow.
I inserted an extra vowel. Katie.
I think no one would notice. I noticed.
No one noticed.
JL, if you have a partner who's just discovering FI, what would you recommend they read or listen to? And she's already said, I know to read your blogs and Simple Path to Wealth. So no easy answers here, JL. What else should they be reading or listening to?
Well, asked and answered. she has the answer to her question. No, there are a lot of wonderful resources out there, and more every day. I mean, Millennial Revolution. We have Doc G, who's going to be one of our speakers this year with the Earn and Invest podcast, or Ken with the Humble Penny are out there. I just was asked to. I just finished reading a book called Cashing Out by the Rich and Regular couple, the Saunders, and it's not out yet. They sent an early edition to me for to write a blurb on, and it's a wonderful book, and it's. You know, I think it'll be the kind of book that'll be the little bit of a nudge that a lot of people might need to get on the path and go forward. So there's no end of great information. I mean, Mr. Money Mustache, the Mad Scientist are, you know, two that have been around as long as I have or longer, and they're great, but they're new voices all the time. So yeah, there's just a lot of wonderful information out there. I frequently, you know, read these things, and I think, man, I wish this had been available when I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s. But because I was wandering in the wilderness trying to figure this stuff out. So, yeah.
Yes. And I think I'm going to do a shameless plug for the Rebel Finance School as well that Katie and I run.
Absolutely.
We're going to be running another one this year. So you're welcome to. Quite a lot of people come on that. And because you can just sit on your couch with us, they do it together as a team.
It's virtual.
It's
That's
virtual.
why we don't all sit on the same couch.
That's correct. That would be weird. What I've found over the years is doing learning together is so important, because quite often one partner goes off and reads a book and gets inspired and then tries to force the other one to read it.
Are you talking about anyone in particular right now?
No. So it's really important to do it together. Really important. So find something you can do together, a podcast you can listen to, something that you'll be doing together. I think that's so critical. Katie, do we have any more questions before we wrap up this mini Chautauqua online? Other than an offer for pizza from Damon.
I think that was directed just to you, so I feel a bit left out. But anyone that's got any burning questions, please retype them in the chat. I realise we didn't get round to all of your questions. For that, I apologise. It's quite hard to keep up and to get all the questions out. Yeah, and there'll be a bit of a lag, so we need to wait.
Yeah, so I think, like, Christian, Bryce, JL, I'd love to have your sort of closing comments for people about the FI journey, the path, because we have a huge amount of people at different points on this journey. What would you say to someone to give them the inspiration and the energy to keep going or to quit?
Well, you know, if I can take that first, I think it was Bryce who was talking about how much stronger that it's not an on-off switch, or maybe it was you, Alan, but it's not an on-off switch. I mean, the moment you start on this path, the moment you start saving and investing money and putting your money to work for you, you become a little bit stronger. You know, it's like going to the gym. You know, you can't bench press 300 pounds the first day you go, but you know, every day that you go, you get a little bit stronger, and eventually you hit that goal of being financially independent. And you know, it's a moving target. You know, the stock market goes up and down. So you say, I want to have $1 million. Well, you might get to that with the stock market's wind at your back, and then the next month you're back down under it. But you keep progressing forward. And even if this book, I'm thinking about this book, Cashing Out, because I just read it, and they talk about the 15-year career. And at the end of the book, they say, you know, even if you quit halfway through, you will be so much stronger than the people who didn't start at all. You will be, by definition, out of debt. You will be, by definition, having investable assets. So every step you take, for as long as you take it, will make it a little bit stronger. And if at some point you decide, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, then you can stop doing it, and you'll be better off by virtue of however far down the path you walked.
I love that answer. I love that answer. So I've got a couple of quick fire questions for Christian Bryce. Just before I do that, Douglas Harper said, how many of you in the FI realm have young children and balance FI goals with education goals, etc.? Just a very quick answer. Mr. Money Mustache has children. Mr. 1500 has kids. Ken, who's one of the speakers. There's so many out there that do that. So there is a lot of people and examples for you to look at on that one. The questions for Christian Bryce, before we get your closing thoughts, are...
can you suggest any reliable tax accountants and or a tax lawyer who can help us with the tax matters if we become resident of another country but still have assets and corporation business in Canada?
Oh, actually, we have the contact of an accountant that we can give you that information. We just don't have it right off the top of our head.
Yeah. So
he's actually very fire friendly, which is great. He was actually like, okay, I want to tell you free information without you paying me first. So like, let me just let you know whether you need an accountant before you hire me. Like, I was like, this guy's the best.
Yeah, he's a CPA,
he's really good. He's very fire friendly.
But the the tax laws change. The tax laws are dependent on where you're planning on moving from, what the type of incorporation and type of business that you have. It can get quite involved, but
I think he knows other international
we can
accountants. So yeah, I think that's a starting point.
And use that as a starting point.
Yeah, that's a starting point.
Please email us at our blog. Email us an email. Send us a message, and we will hook you up.
Yeah,
I love that. And the Johnny Wonders says, Christy, why aren't you wearing red?
I'm wearing my Chautauqua t-shirt.
All of us actually have Chautauqua t-shirts right now, and
wait,
Alan made us.
Not all of us.
There we go.
We're getting you one.
We're getting you one. We're getting you one. But these t-shirts are Chautauqua themed, and they're from. And we thought it would be fitting that we all wore themed shirts like a bunch of weirdos.
So closing thoughts, Christy and Bryce, what are your closing thoughts for our fabulous audience tonight?
Okay, so my initial understanding of FIRE was that, like, because I grew up poor, for me it was all about money. Like, it's like my mom basically, like, literally beat into me the fact that, like, money is the most important thing in the entire world and nothing else matters. But now that I've actually become FI and we've actually been retired for 7 years now, and then having gone through a pandemic, having gone through many market crashes and survived it, I've realized that money is the first step to having enough. But then after that, there's so many other things that I've learned that's really important. It's like your health, your family, your community, and all of those things we've been able to strengthen during the pandemic as a result of having enough. Like, as a result of having the money, which is a tool which helps you have enough so that you actually have the space and the time to think about what really matters to you. And I think this becoming financially independent has really transformed our ability to help our parents, like in their time of need, because of what happened to your dad, like that personal health crisis. Because we were FI, we were the only people who didn't have to work, and we could be helping your mom immediately when it comes to your dad's medical appointments. Like, we could just be there right away for them. And then I found, like, my mother was actually in the hospital as well, so there was a lot of personal emergency crisis that happened with us as well. So what I realized, that money is a tool to help you have enough so that you can focus on the other most important things in your life, which is your relationships and your family and your health, because all of those things you can't ever buy back. You can't buy love, and you can't buy money. You can't buy love, and you can't buy health, which is something that Warren Buffett said. And it really is proven during this pandemic that people realize what their real priorities are. And money is the tool that will help give you your time back so that you can actually focus on those most important things in your life.
Yep. I love that answer, so I'm just going to let it stand.
Perfect. I love that answer too. Before I wrap up and thank everyone, closing messages from my wife.
I think as humans, we have this tendency to defer our happiness until a certain thing happens. Oh, I'll be happy at the weekend when the working week is over. I'll be happy once I've finished this project that's stressful. I'll be happy when, and when never comes. And I think a lot of people pin all their hopes and happiness on becoming financially independent. They think when they hit that number, there'll be unicorns and rainbows and glitter and confetti pouring out of the computer screen, out of the sky, all sorts of places. I thought that was going to happen for me.
It didn't.
I knew logically that it wouldn't, but it was still a surprise when it didn't happen. And suddenly, like, oh, I'm FI. Why aren't all my problems solved? Why aren't I blissfully happy the whole time? I was still the same person the day before our number just happened to tick over to what we needed to retire, as I was that day and the day afterwards. So I would say, work on your happiness as you go. Don't defer it until hitting this magical number. You need to work on happiness along the way, as well as working on your finances.
What a great message. And this has been so much fun. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Kevin, Manoush, Damon, Kennetha, Lee, everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And thank you to Mr. J.L. Collins from The Simple Path to Wealth. Thank you for creating Chautauqua and bringing so much joy and advice to us all. Please give Mr. J.L. Collins a round of applause.
Hey!
Thank you.
I can do with an emoticon. Look, there's a clap, clap, clap. Yeah.
And thank you so much to Millennial Revolution for all of your content, your book, your ideas, and your endless positivity. We love you.
Mwah.
Thank you so much.
See you in Colombia, everybody.
JL looks like he's going to say something.
I'm going to say thank you to Alan and Katie for everything you do, and for Christy and Bryce. Chautauqua would certainly not be the same without you guys. And every year you take it to another level that just amazes me. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And the final word we'll leave to Bryce here, who says, for all of those who are going to Chautauqua for the first time in September, I have to say attending Chautauqua was one of the best things I ever did. And on that note, good night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being part of the gang. And we shall see you again on a live stream soon.
Bye.
Bye now.
Goodbye. And there you go. We're offline.